Mangwanani Mwalelepo Fukenjani Klekwaswana Africa. Welcome to Africa Good Morning, the news and current affairs show bringing you everything you need to know happening on the African continent and beyond. It's the first show of the month of July and we're absolutely excited to be taking you through the news stories.
And here are some of the top stories. Watchdog clears South Africa President Ramaphosa of conflict of interest. Police arrest 1,000 in French ahead of teens' funeral, and opposition vows not to take part in Sierra Leone's governance. You can follow all our programs on oneup2.com or DSTV channel 285, as well as GoTV channel 25 in Namibia. Later on the show, we bring you sports as well as news from Zimbabwe with Talent Kore. We'll be right back shortly.
Welcome to Active Kids, a daily TV show that sparks creativity, learning, and fun for young minds. With exciting activities and lessons, Active Kids inspires curiosity and a love for learning.
New face to the 15.
The perfect mix of play and education. Don't miss out on the fun. Tune in to Active Kids on NTV every weekday at 10 o'clock and let the adventure begin.
Here are the news making headlines. Watchdog clears South Africa's President Ramaphosa of conflict of interest. South Africa's anti-corruption watchdog has cleared President Cyril Ramaphosa of a potential conflict of interest in relation to more than $500,000 cash stolen from his game farm. A report released by acting public prosecutor Koleka Tsakleka found no evidence for the allegation that Ramaphosa violated his oath of office or exposed himself to a risk of conflict between his constitutional duties and his private interest. The incident raised questions about how Ramaphosa, who came to power on the promise to fight graft, acquired the money and whether he declared it.
Now in the next story, violence and looting hit France in a fourth night of protests as massively deployed police made nearly 1,000 arrests, and the country braced for more arrests ahead of the funeral on Saturday of the teenager who was killed by an officer during a traffic stop. The government said the violence had lessened compared to previous nights, but the Interior Ministry still reported 994 arrests nationwide overnight and 79 injuries among police and gendarmes. This is more than on any night since protests began on Tuesday, sparked by the death of 17-year-old Nahel by a police bullet. Provisional ministry numbers released early on Saturday also included 1,350 vehicles and 234 buildings torched and 2,560 incidents of fire set in public spaces.
In our next story, opposition vows not to take part in Sierra Leone's governance. Sierra Leone's main opposition party has said it will not take part in any level of governance in the country, from parliament to local councils, following what it called fraudulent presidential election results. President Julius Maada Bio was re-elected for a second term in the first round of voting with 56.17% of the ballots, according to results released by the Electoral Commission on Tuesday, which have been contested by the opposition and local organizations. Now, international observers noted the statistical inconsistency between the partial result and the final result and condemned the lack of transparency in the ballot count, while calling for peaceful dialogue to resolve the differences.
Now, South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa has given the green light for top public servants to get a salary hike amid the country's adverse economic conditions. Ramaphosa's approval comes after the Independent Commission for the Remuneration of Public Office Bearers had recommended a 3.8% increase almost 3 months ago. At the time, the proposed salary increase sparked debate across South Africa, with a number of citizens arguing on social media for quite some time now that public servants were receiving a lot of money. But the presidency announced on Saturday that cabinet ministers, members of parliament, judges and traditional leaders will only receive a 3% bump in their salaries. Presidency spokesperson Vincent Magwenya said Ramaphosa had signed off on a determination to increase salaries of all public office bearers. The increase backdated to April 2022.
In our next story, 5 Nollywood bigwigs join Oscar board. 5 Nigerians from the country's film industry, Nollywood, have been selected to become members of the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Science. The Academy is known around the world for its annual Academy Awards, officially and popularly known as the Oscar. A veteran Richard Mofu Damijo, director CJ Obasi, producer Jade Osiberu, and writers Kunle Afoyan and Shola Dada have been selected based on their contributions to cinema. As members, they will now receive voting rights for the Oscars nominations and winners. The Academy is proud to welcome these artists and professionals into our membership. They represent extraordinary global talent across cinematic disciplines and have made a vital impact on the arts and science of motion picture and on movie fans worldwide, said Academy CEO and the president. Now, the Academy has previously faced criticism for lack of diversity. A study in 2012 by Los Angeles Times newspaper found that 94% of the Oscar voters were white. However, critics note there have been some changes since the Oscar So White trended 8 years ago.
Very, very interesting. It'll be good to see some diversity within Africa as well. You know, there's more African countries than just Nigeria, but a step in the right direction. Thank you very much for watching our top stories on Africa. Good morning. Now, Zimbabwe has a population of just over 15 million people. And if you were one of those 15 million people needing open heart surgery in the last 5 years, you would not have been able to get it within the country. And it seems like that has recently changed. Talent Gore will take us into that story and more after the break.
The Agenda is a weekly national affairs interview program hosted every Sunday by Namibian Sun editor Toivon Jabela, featuring a panel of high-profile newsmakers, analysts, and experts. The Agenda aims to reach high-end news consumers seeking informed understanding of national issues. This show is broadcasted on NTV, 1up2.com, and the Namibia Media Holdings Facebook.
Now, as I just highlighted, Zimbabwe seems to have resumed open heart surgery after 5 years. And Talent Gore is here to expand on that story and more. Talent, wamuka say, famba nebora.
Africa. So a fortnight ago, I did a story on how Zimbabwe had resumed open heart surgery, and apparently a local team of doctors have recently done 2 of the open heart surgeries, and all of them have been successful. So the doctors are saying that they are now working on ensuring that they perform at least 1 open heart surgery per week, because we have a backlog of 700 people who want to have open heart surgeries. Apparently, most of the people, they could not travel to India because for the last 5 years, Zimbabwe was not performing open heart surgeries, and people were traveling to India and other countries to be operated. But now the doctors are saying that they're going to make sure that they clear the backlog of people who want to have open heart surgeries, and apparently there are about 700 people who want to have open heart surgeries. So the last person who was operated last week, apparently she's recovering quite well. She's still in hospital, and she was very much grateful of the doctors who had performed the surgeries on her. So now we're just waiting to see when and how the doctors are going to be conducting the surgeries, now that they are saying that they want to perform one surgery per week. So we'll be monitoring the situation, and so far so good. The 2 people that they have operated, they are recovering quite well and they're doing well, but they're still in hospital.
All right, Talent, we understand that highway robbers have caused havoc in Zimbabwe. What exactly did they do?
Okay, so apparently, as you know, Zimbabwe has the main road, which also leads to which forms part of the Cape to Cairo. So along that road, it's called Harare to Chirundu Highway. Apparently, there have been robbers who are now targeting truck drivers along that highway. The road is it's in a bad state. So truck drivers, they can't drive during the night. They have to drive whilst it's still daytime. So apparently, the moment that they park their trucks, or even if they're not truck drivers, normal drivers, if they park their cars or anything, robbers will be waiting for those parked cars, and they then attack the drivers, stealing them, and they'll be they use machetes to scare the drivers. And so the truck drivers are saying that government has to do something, because they are only parking their vehicles because the road is in a bad state. There are potholes, and the road hasn't been rehabilitated since 1980, since we gained independence. So it is now in a bad state, and the truck drivers, they're appealing to government that can it at least rehabilitate the road so that they do not have to stop unnecessarily, and now they are being attacked by robbers. So
Sorry,
so
Talent,
that is what is.
I'm just going to ask you to just clarify on that. You said the road has not been fixed since 1980.
Yes.
To be clear, there has been a government since 1980 in Zimbabwe.
Yes.
Zimbabwe is going for elections August 2023, and it hasn't been fixed since then. Wow.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much for bringing us the stories from Zimbabwe.
You're welcome, and thank you very much for having me.
It's always good having you on Africa Good Morning, telling us the stories as they are. Let's go to the weather predictions.
Welcome to My.NA Cars, your ultimate destination for everything automotive.
I am your host, Diana Master.
Teamwork makes the dream work, right?
Discover the latest models, innovative technologies, and expert insights from our passionate hosts. Learn essential maintenance tips and get exclusive behind-the-scenes access to the automotive industry. Don't miss My.NA Cars on NTV every Thursday at 2100 hours. Tune in and ignite your passion for automobiles.
Here are the economic news, proudly brought to you by Bank Venture. Now, DBS agrees to give Botswana more rough diamonds in the new sales pact. Botswana and DBS Group have agreed a new diamond sale deal in which the African country, the world's #1 diamond producer by value, gradually increases the share of rough stones it gets from their joint venture, Botswana, over the next decade to 50%, the government and the mining company said on Saturday. The Botswanan government and DBS said they had agreed on a 10-year sale deal for Botswana's rough diamonds production through the 2023 and on a 25-year Botswana mining license valid until 2054.
Now, Ghana's independent power producers have suspended a threatened shutdown from July 1st, which would have been Saturday, after reaching an interim deal with the state-run Electricity Company of Ghana over arrears owed to them, the group said in a statement late on Friday. In late May, the IPPs rejected a government proposal to restructure $1.58 billion in arrears owed them by the state as part of the West African nation's efforts to implement a $3 billion loan deal from the International Monetary Fund aimed at addressing its worst economic crisis in a generation. The group later warned of outages from July if its members did not receive an interim payment of 30% of the arrears to cover key operational costs and their own overdue debt service. Under the new agreement, the power producers have received an interim payment offer with the understanding the government and Electricity Company of Ghana will use the grace period to work towards a permanent resolution to the debt issue, the group said. That brings us to the end of our economic news. Let's head into the indicators.
To another exciting episode of Watchdog.
Is die weer en vertel ook vir julle waar die vis heel moontlik gaan byt.
We are so excited to be kickstarting your morning with entertainment. Everything was happening during this past weekend.
Yes.
Exciting news.
Wow, no, she was killing it already.
In my opinion, I don't see anything wrong with him serving the full term.
As well as keeping you informed on the issues that you need to know happening in and around our country.
Now, as the news progresses, economic declines happen, riots happen. The most important and pertinent issue remains climate change. And one way to stem the effects of climate change is to preserve the world and get rid of plastics, which is why today the world commemorates No Plastics Day. Have a look at this interview with Yolanda now.
International Plastic Bag Free Day, celebrated on the 3rd of July, is a global initiative that aims to eliminate the use of plastic bags. Plastic bags may seem like a grocery shopping convenience, but they are also a huge strain on the environment. It can take up to 500 years for plastic bags to disintegrate, so they make up a large portion of what stays in our landfills and pollutes our waterways. International Plastic Bag Free Day looks for safer alternatives to demonstrate that a world without the use of so much plastic is possible. It is part of the Break Free from Plastic movement, which began in September 2016 and has been joined by nearly 1,500 different organizations. The movement is looking for solutions to the plastic pollution crisis to make the planet safer for humans, the environment, and wildlife. After a rocky start to a week of negotiations in June this year, around 180 countries agreed to develop a first draft by November for what could become the first global treaty to curb plastic pollution by the end of next year. Country delegations, NGOs and industry representatives gathered in Paris for the second round of talks toward a legally binding pact to halt the explosion of plastic waste that harms the environment from its carbon-intensive production to its end of life in dumps, landfills, shorelines and oceans. Though the first half of the 5-day negotiation was spent arguing over procedural issues, delegations split into two groups to discuss the range of control measures that can be taken to stop plastic pollution, as well as whether countries should develop national plans or set global targets to tackle the problem. Individuals and businesses are expected to join the International Plastic Bag Free Day by just stop using plastic bags, reduce, reuse and recycle, and to practice your green thumb. The best way to celebrate is always the easiest to do, so wherever you find yourself on the 3rd of July, from the grocery store to the park, make sure not to use or ask for any plastic bags. Another spectacular way to celebrate is to recycle and upcycle the things around you. And then practice your green thumb. Use your day to give Mother Nature a helping hand. It's the perfect time to finally plant a new tree or some nice flowers. The planet and the wildlife around you will thank you.
And welcome to the Sport Wrap Show.
I'm in conversation with Harry Simon, who just won the fight against the guy from Malawi. How are you?
And for us Manchester United fans, a lot to be excited for. Met altijd voor doelskoppen geslagen this year.
Okay. And are you happy about the overall success of the event?
Our number one spot is...
Asian boxer Lucas Ndafoluma is itching to fight again.
It's the Winter Wrestling Club's tournament today. It's the Open Championship and all these cool sports. So today we're not that much. Yeah, I think...
Atenebo has been on my radar for some time.
Safi skramskakel weer aangekeerd.
It was a Formula One weekend which was marred with disqualifications all over the place after some really interesting sprints. Now, Red Bull's Formula One leader Max Verstappen took his 5th win in a row on Sunday in an extraordinary Austrian Grand Prix that ended up with nearly half of the 20-car field punished for failing to stay on track. The Dutch driver won from pole position and with the fastest lap as the reigning champion celebrated a 10th successive victory and 9th in as many races this season. Verstappen, who also won Saturday's 100-kilometer sprint race and leaves Spielberg's Red Bull ring with a maximum haul, stretched his lead over third-placed Mexican teammate Sergio Perez to 81 points.
In our next story, Max crashes out of tour as fellow podium contender Carapaz takes hit. Spain's Eric Mes becomes the first of the 176 riders on Tour de France to abandon the race, quitting during the first stage after crashing heavily on a descent some 22 kilometers from the finish on Saturday. Now, the Movistar leader, a 3-time Vuelta a España runner-up, who finished the 5th overall on the Tour in 2020, fell off his bike alongside Ecuador's Richard Carapaz, one of the other podium contenders. Now, Carapaz of the EF Education team climbed back on his bike after being attended by race doctors and was hovering some 5 minutes behind the leading bunch.
I mean, I feel like quitting is a strong word if you crashed on your motorcycle, but you know, it is what it is. We'll be back with the highlights from this morning's broadcast.
Welcome to What's Cooking, where culinary passion meets expert insights.
Somebody must really want to cook and want to cook good food.
Immerse yourself in the bustling world of professional kitchens as top chefs create mouth-watering dishes. Join us for in-depth interviews as our host explores the experiences and expertise of our guest chefs. Don't miss out. Tune in to What's Cooking on NTV every Friday at 2100 hours, and let the culinary adventure begin.
Let's get into two of our top highlights from this morning's broadcast. Farmgate Watchdog clears South Africa's President Ramaphosa of conflict of interest. And police arrest 1,000 in French riots ahead of teen's funeral.
Those have been our stories. Thank you very much for watching Africa Good Morning. We will be back tomorrow. Same time, same place. It's all our love, all our light.